That doesn't sound too convincing. Everybody get what they want? Be like Ralphie. Got to give this, you remember it all the time. Yep, well, we did. We had a good Christmas. Rachel's been a little bit sick, but she's better now, so we're very grateful for that. And I do like I normally do. I always eat too much. Man, I had Rachel got me this whole thing of caramel popcorn. I don't even know that lasted through the next night. I just demolished that thing. So I've absolutely enjoyed myself. I know I'm going to pay for it later. I'm going to try to start back working out after the first of the year. Maybe I'm just telling myself that I don't know if I'm making it. Maybe I'll wait till March until all the treadmills kind of chill out at the Y. You know, there'll be 50,000 people there come out the first week of January. But again, glad to see everybody. Hope you had a good Christmas, however you spent that. I want to go ahead and get started. Really, if you think about it, it seems like we were just talking about the beginning of the Advent season a few weeks ago, and here we are already with Christmas 2019 in our rearview mirrors. Even though we still have New Year's to celebrate, and many of us are already looking to the year 2020, right? We start thinking about things like New Year's resolutions, things we're going to start doing, maybe things we're going to restart again for whatever reason that we didn't maybe make it through the last time that we decided to go down whatever journey that was. Or we're going to do things differently. Right? However that is, after we tear off the last calendar page of this year, we start looking towards a new season in life. But even if resolutions aren't your thing, if you're not the kind of person who sits down and kind of draws out what those New Year's resolutions are in your life, now that Christmas is over, we still start thinking about what's next. What's next on the calendar? I know I'm already, John mentioned this earlier when we passed in the hallway that he was already thinking about the ski trip. I've been doing the same thing. We just got a couple of weeks away and off we go up to Winter Place. And so that's something that already that I've been looking ahead to, even though we still have New Year's to come. I think about teachers. You know, January begins the long break before spring break. Right? This abyss of time before you ever really have any time off, right? Teachers are very, famous for looking ahead at certain dates, blocks throughout the year as the school year goes. And there's not anything wrong. I'm not trying to say it's bad to plan, to look ahead, or even be excited about it. So I'm excited about the ski trip. That's one of my favorite things to do, and I love going, and I'm excited about that. But again, it's one of those things where we have to be careful, because I think sometimes we can get so wrapped up in what's ahead that we don't enjoy what's right in front of us. And so often we miss the things right in front of our face because we're so worried about trying to plan or look ahead to things that we have coming up. We just kind of get caught up in this cycle of going from one thing to the next, and all of a sudden we look up and the whole year's already gone by. It's like the video we watched, if you were here a few weeks ago, that talked about how we live life very often from one celebration to the next. Right? How, the graduation or the celebration of the birthday, whatever that is, it's never quite what we thought it would be. Right? And so here we are, Christmas is over, right? There's no more candles to light, no more gifts to open for the most part. We pretty much got all our trash picked up and we're ready. It's either hauled off or we got it ready to haul off. I say that and I still got to haul some stuff off from our house. And soon we're going to take the decorations, we're going to put them back in the boxes, and we're going to put them away until next year. But until then, what's next? There's a long dash between now and this time next year. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with looking ahead or even being excited about some of the things to come. And the New Year's good to have a positive outlook. But there's some questions that I've been thinking about, and I think we all need to think about and really ask ourselves before we just kind of hit warp speed and take off into the new year. Because the reality is, even though 2020 is about to begin, right, next thing you know, we're going to be sitting here talking about some of the same things as we look ahead to 2021. And after all, we spent the last 4 weeks, right, really investing in the things of Advent, reminding ourselves that it's a time to pause, right, and to consider, to think about where we are in life, right, where are we in our relationship with Christ, and really think about those things that we focus on in life, the things that we chase after so often. And to really think about all that in relation to what's going on in here, right, within our hearts, as it relates to our relationship with Christ. So, before we leave all that behind, I just kind of wanted to use our time today and maybe focus a little bit on some of the things that we've covered over the last couple of weeks. We've covered a lot since we began. Even if you weren't here for all that, I hope you spent some time reading. I hope you spent some time praying, taking some time to slow down and reflect on some of the things that we've talked about, some of the things that you've got going on in your life in relationship to your walk with Christ, and taking time to reflect on God's Word. Right? And so before we just jump off and leave this season behind, I'm just going to ask a couple of questions and we're going to roll through here. What are some of the things, right, if you've been here especially, that you've heard over the last 4 weeks? What are some of the things that you've heard? I mean, like, things that you've really heard. Like, I mean, really kind of, stuck with you. And is there anything that would lead you to think that Advent 2020 is going to be different than Advent 2019 because of that thing or a few things that you heard? I really, as I consider all these things, the weight of what's happening and where we're going and the vision of how God is moving and what He's doing, I think really, ultimately, the bottom line, underlying thing of what I'm trying to get at here, if I can just, to be direct, is the time that we spend here together talking about the message that God has given us in His Word. Are you hearing a few words from some message? Or are you actively listening in a way that you begin to understand? And before this year's up, not even thinking about 2020, I mean, listen, man, what difference is it going to make? I mean, what, if anything that we said over the last couple of weeks, if any time that you've been here, what difference is it going to make as you move forward? And how you respond? How are you going to respond? Are you responding? Are you thinking about how you are going to respond? Better yet, as I think ahead, let me just try to be direct as I can, if that's all right. In the upcoming year, in your walk with Christ, when you think about your life individually and us as the life of the church, are we going to play church in 2020, or are we going to be the church in 2020? See, God is speaking, He's moving, and He's doing that in some very powerful ways. And if we want to be a part of that, right, we just can't hear a few things here and there. Right? Hearing is simply the act of perceiving sound by ear. So you really don't have to do anything. You can totally be zoned out, looking off, not really listening, not hearing, not understanding what I'm saying, but still you hear. It doesn't take really anything for that to happen. It simply does happen. Listening, however, is something that you consciously choose to do. Right? It requires concentration. Right? So what happens is that your brain begins to move and function and process meaning of words and whole sentences. Right? And so, again, if we are going to be the church this year, upcoming, and hopefully beyond, we're going to have to listen to what God is saying so we can then respond to what God is saying. So we need to be able to listen. Now, there's a lot of places we could have looked and gone through in the Scriptures to talk about that. But since we were in Luke 2 last week, I just want to stay there. I thought it'd be a good place to finish before we start our series through Nehemiah. next week. So again, if you have your Bibles, hopefully you do, go ahead and have those open to Luke chapter 2. And what I want to do, I want to take just a minute. I'm going to look back to a few of the verses that we talked about last week. And then we're just going to finish up with a real quick look at the end of chapter 2. So, take a look, Luke 2. We're going to pick it up in verse 20. We'll kind of work our way back a little bit. If you look, it says that the shepherds, all right, so we're all still here, right, with the Christmas story, right? The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told. Right, so all of us in here pretty much know the story, right? Remember we talked about is the shepherds who are out in the field, sitting around, all of a sudden it's dark and there's this burst of light, and all of a sudden here are these angels, and they begin to speak. They have a message. So they tell them something, and then ultimately the shepherds respond by going to see. And so it says as we go through this, that what they saw was just as they had been told. And so, ultimately, like I said in verse 20, they glorified and praised God. Verse 20 says, for all the things that they had heard. But see, they didn't just hear. They listened. See, the Greek word here for, here, in verse 20, actually means to consider what is or has been, or to understand and perceive the sense of what is said. And that's a lot different than simply just hearing, right? I'm going to give you an example. I try to really be careful with this. You all know my wife, Rachel?
Yes.
Yes, she is a very smart woman. And there's some things, as I kind of try to think back, something I do, or maybe it's something that I don't do, that ultimately leads Rachel to say something like, were you able to go to so-and-so, or were you able to pick up so-and-so? Were you able to, did you do so-and-so, or did you get this, did you go here, do you remember this? And then she, and she's looking at me like, well, because I don't remember. And I know she's like, well, what do you mean you don't remember? You don't know about this? To which I respond something like, well, again, what are you talking about? To which Rachel usually responds, well, we talked about this already. Don't you remember? Weren't you listening? Right? And sometimes that answer is yes. Sometimes that answer is no. Sometimes it's like yes and no. What I mean by that, I think about being honest. A lot of times, once we get to that point, I can think back and I can remember parts of the conversation. I'm like, oh, golly, yes. And I think I can even remember at some point, kind of nodding. I think Corey got that from me, because he sometimes is nodding, and he really ain't hearing what I'm saying. And I think he got that from me. Because I can remember sort of some parts of this conversation, right? But in all reality, I really just wasn't paying attention. I didn't understand, or really even I wasn't able to process the implications of what she was saying. And that, I think in some way, right, you don't have to be married for this to apply, right? All of us in some way can, I think, relate to this. But especially if you think about the world that we live in, right? We're just bombarded with so much information, text messages, emails, phone calls, news, shows. We get hit so much, man. It's hard for us it's easy for us to check out. We all struggle with this in some way, but I want you to understand that these things, even though they're difficult, we have to wrestle with them because we have to be able to absorb and understand and let whatever we're hearing take root. Because all of this, when you think about it, lives aren't changed by messages that we don't understand. That takes more than simply just hearing some noise. In verse 20, we read that it was what they heard, but what actually is happening is that they are listening, right? We don't see it there. We just kind of read over that, right? We say, well, they heard this message, right? And we don't think about the fact that they aren't just hearing, right? They are listening perceiving, understanding. And then look back up at verse 17. It says that after they'd seen him, okay, this is him meaning baby Jesus, it says that they spread the word concerning what had been told them about this child. So again, we see that the shepherds were told something, right? But in addition to hearing what they were told, they also spread the word. Okay, now the word, the Greek word there is actually used for word. In verse 17, what it means is message. Okay, it means message. And so if you go through this whole thing, you basically got two stages here. You have the angels speaking to the shepherds, and then the shepherds going to speak to everybody else. And I think ultimately, what I'm trying to get at is, I was thinking about us coming out of Advent and moving towards the first of the year. And it may sound a little bit weird to look at this at first this way, especially since this passage is mostly seen as just as a Christmas passage. You read it at Christmas time. But when you look beneath just the words themselves, the deeper you go, the more lessons you find through the wisdom that God provides. And I just think it's easy for us to read things like this and absolutely blow over the fact and never really consider, right, that there's a lesson here for us on the importance of listening. I mean, all throughout this section, you see words like hear, hearing, told, message, and all of these things paint a picture of more than just simply hearing some noise. And then if you look down, there's one more example here I want to look at real quick. Down at verse 19. So this is right after the shepherds. All this stuff happened. And so they go, and they came to Mary, and then they explained what they had been told. All right, and so look at what Mary says about all this. It says that she treasured up all these things, pondering them in her heart. She treasured up all these things, pondering them in her heart. I think the first thing to recognize is the fact that, look, Mary has just given birth to Jesus Christ, okay? I mean, I think we would all understand that in this case, it might take a little more now to stir her sense of wonder and awe. More than just a few scraggly shepherds to come in and say, look, let me explain to you what happened. She's like, man, where you been? My angel come to me a long time ago. But it says that she treasured what they said, and then, we don't use this word very often, right? She pondered. It's kind of a funny word. But she pondered those things in her heart. And that's another one of those words. When you translate the word ponder from its original text, it literally means to put into context, to connect. I want you to listen now, to say, how does this fit within everything in my life? See, it doesn't do any good for us to read the scriptures and then just go off in some way that's not really connecting. What's happening here, and how does it connect with the world that I see today? How does it fit into everything that I know? How does it connect with or fit in how I'm living my life now, today? It's taking what's said, thinking through it, and connecting it to your life. And not only does Mary think about it, right? It says that she treasures it, which now ties emotion into it. Ties in the emotions of her heart. And what do you do when you treasure something? When you treasure something, you keep it alive. You feed it. You find ways to stir your affections for it. Right? You take it in and you let it burn in your heart until it means something. Not that you understand it at first, but you run after it, you let it burn, and you think about it in the context of your own life, good and bad, until it roots itself and it means something and it begins to transform. Are you listening to what God says in His Word? And does it mean something? Or not? Are you taking it in? Are you thinking your way through it and trying to connect it to your own life? Are you listening? It's such a basic question that sounds like such a mom, dad, teenager question. Are you listening? Are you listening? We'd be foolish to underestimate our ability to hear or to not hear, especially with the world that we live in today. And it's like it's so easy to turn it off. I'm grateful for every face here. Whether there's 20 or whether there's 100, I'm grateful for your presence here and being here to worship and to hear what God has to say. I enjoy preaching, and we need to hear. There's a very high premium put on in the Scriptures on the preaching of God's Word. This is a necessary part of our life as the church. But God's Word needs to be preached. It needs to be taught. And so hopefully, as a pastor, I'm able to continue developing and improving on the skill of being interesting, right? I want to be interesting. I need to be compelling, right? As pastors, we should want to be persuasive. And there's nothing wrong with that. Hopefully, that's something that's part of my call that I will continue to develop and that skill in that area. I want to be able to give you a message that will hold your attention, but I think first I want to ask you this. Can you hold your own attention to God's Word? Can you interest yourself? Can you sit down and think about what's being said, even though if you don't fully understand it, and bring the truth of God's Word into your heart and let it speak, let it confront you, let it talk to the things that you've got going on in your life? Are you listening? Can you keep it there until it takes root and it begins to transform and shape your heart, your will, and your mind, and even your emotions? I mean, when you come here each week, are you just do you just hear a few words from some message, or are you listening to what's being said? Because again, lives don't change by messages that we just simply hear. Lives change when we listen to the point that we begin to understand. And then with every message that we are given as God speaks, it also comes with an expectation that we would respond to that. I would say God never calls us in without spitting us right back out. And so when He speaks in whatever way, right, we are always forced with responding. I mean, we can come to church each week, and we can sit here, right, we can chat a little bit, we can sing a few songs, maybe even kind of raise our hand a little bit, maybe not. Maybe every now and then I might say something funny. Maybe there's something you might find interesting, right? You say, I can relate to that. We can leave, and you know what? Then we can just information dump. We can come back next week and do it all over again, or maybe not come back. I don't know. But if that alone is our response, then what are we doing really? I mean, honestly, we're not a club. There's plenty of clubs. So if that's all we're doing, then what are we doing? Because in that way, what will happen is we'll only continue to come here, maybe out of habit. I'm supposed to go to church, so I'm just going to go. And then what happens is church becomes stale. Right? And then inevitably, we become bitter. Or maybe we'll stay for a while. We'll get really involved in all the stuff that the church has to get involved in. Right, we'll do this, we'll do that, we'll even be on a committee, we'll help with that group, we'll help maybe even plan and organize. We'll take time out of our life and work and everything else to come here and even meet and to talk. And even maybe help with some of the events that happen that are about church. And again, there's nothing wrong with that or those things in and of themselves. But if you're not listening to what God is saying to you about your life, about the church and the world that's around you, without being rooted in and taking steps, however small, trying to grow in your understanding of God's Word and the message that God has given us, see, all of that activity becomes religious activity, which eventually leads to burnout, which eventually leads to I'm out. And you can tell that story 10,000 times. Because if we're not rooted in Christ and God's Word when we come here, you're going to get burnt out. And it ain't going to take it one time and somebody's going to do something. You're like, I'm done with this mess, man. I can't tell you how many times over and over and over we hear that story. Or maybe another option is you come, you really dig into God's Word, and it begins to take root, and then your eyes are open, and you start looking around, and you go, you know what, this isn't lining up. And then you're out. There's 1,000 of those stories. See, when the shepherds, when they got this message, they don't just talk about it. They don't just kind of sit down, chat, leave, and then come back the next week and then talk about some more. I mean, I'm not saying they did talk about it. But see, what they did was they responded, and they went. And when they go, what they did was they took that message with them. It actually makes a difference in their life and the lives of other people. And I'm not saying that, oh God, all of a sudden the shepherds, man, they just clicked and they had it all figured out. Because that's not the case, man. Look, these people were just as imperfect and broken and jagged up as we are, as our families are, as the world. I mean, they struggle with the same things that we do. And all of us have to grow in our understanding of God's Word, and that never ends. I don't care who you are. But much of that growth can and only will come through our response of being in the hands and feet of God's people, the church, who bring the good news. Right? To intentionally engage our community, to serve our community, our nation, this world, in areas that we've identified the gospel is needed. See, I always say, if we miss this, our churches have much more impact when we are listening to what God's saying and our buildings are empty. We have much more impact on this world, and the less we are here, the more people will be here. Because that's what we were called to do. We were called in, we were sent back out. God's got a message. That message will continue. And either we will join him in spreading that message, or he will find those who will. So, a lot to think about. I know that's pretty deep on some level, but listen, Advent's come and gone, man. We're moving on. So what brings the new year in? Where are you going? What you going to do? What's going to be different next year? What's your life going to be about? What you going to focus on? You going to find your worth in some person, some mean person, some girl, some boy who says this or that? You going to find your worth in that? Or realize that ain't got nothing to do with who you are? And that there's a message of grace and mercy that is only peace and the hope in this world that we can ever find. It's what everybody's looking for, whether they know it or not. We've been called to carry that message. I'll leave with this. I hope you take it both as an encouragement as well as a challenge for all of us in here, including myself, as we get ready for this brand new year. It's coming up near the end of chapter 2. If you just kind of scan down, we come to essentially the only recorded material in the Gospels of Jesus as a young boy. All right, it's one of my favorite passages. I love it. I just love the picture it gives because it is a very powerful reminder to us of the message that God sent and an example of how we are to respond. So just hang with me just one more minute. We're almost done. All right, so here we are near the end. Jesus is 12 years old. We're past all the angels and the shepherds. As part of the custom, Mary and Joseph are taking him to the feast of the Passover in Jerusalem. Now they're there for a certain amount of time. When it was over, they start packing up, getting all this stuff together, and they're going to head back home. Now there's a lot of people with them. It's not just them. There's a lot of people with them. Okay? So it took them a while to get everything together and start heading back home. But at some point along the way, all of a sudden, Mary and Joseph realized that Jesus, they didn't know where he was. They started asking, have you seen him? Have you seen him? They didn't know where he was. They didn't know it, but in verse 43, what it tells us is that Jesus stayed behind on purpose, right? And so they go back, they eventually find him teaching and asking questions in the temple, okay? And I think they were like any other parents, they were scared, they were frustrated. Once they saw him there, honestly probably got a little angry. But I want you to listen to what Jesus says, what he responds to them when they ask him why he did this. Verse 49, he says, "Why are you searching for me? Didn't you know that I must be about my Father's business?" Didn't you know this is why I came? And he might as well say to us, didn't you know this is why I called you? And why I said count the cost before you follow me? See, Jesus was the Word that became flesh. He was God's message to us. It's like just as God sent Jesus, Jesus now sends us. So if you're listening, this is the business that we are to be about. So in 2020, I ask you again, are we going to play church? Or are we going to be church? Big difference. Let's pray. God, we are grateful. Man, it's hard because there's so many things. There's so many other things that we can be doing. Man, there's things that we can be messing around with, things that we can just be chilling at home, watching TV. We could be out cruising, maybe somewhere getting something to eat. And there's just so many things, God, that we can be just tied up with right now that maybe in some way kind of give us a little satisfaction, but Lord, they only leave us wanting. And so we just run to the next and run to the next. Oh, there's so much more that we've been created for, and it's so hard sometimes, God, because we want to try to take things and maybe twist it and turn it a little bit, because then it's not so difficult for us to hear. Man, that there's a rhythm and pattern, God, that you created us to live and walk in, and I just ask that you continue to help our life line up into that. And that together we would begin to live with abandon, God, that we would seek to be a reflector of your image, to live, to serve, to give, to let go of the things in the world that try to take us away, to celebrate and enjoy what you've given, but never let those things become ultimate in our life. And we know, God, that if we are going to be the people in the church that you called us to be, we're going to have to fight for that. And we're going to have to rest in your strength. And we're going to have to get up and we're going to have to go. We're going to have to take this message with us. We don't know how it all looks. We don't know how all of it will take shape. But God, we know that you are moving time in history where and when you want. You are continuously redeeming all things back to yourself through Christ, God, that you have created. And so, God, we just long to be a part of that. In whatever way, whatever gift, whatever way you choose.